Welcome back, everybody, to Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. Any ahas this past week?
Habits formed on frequency, not time.
Yeah.
That was kind of enlightening to my brain because I never thought of it that way. I've always thought of it, you just over time you get really into it. So that was a big statement I read.
Yeah, it's the number of times that you practice a habit, not the time consumed. Made me think about, there's a book out there called No Can Do, K-N-O-W, Can Do, by what's the guy that wrote Don't Move My Cheese, or Who Moved My Cheese? He also wrote The 1 Minute Manager.
Blanchard?
Yeah, Blanchard and Paul Meyer in Waco wrote a book. The third author they wrote a book called No Can Do that was about the way they put it, not repetition, spaced repetition. And so you do a lot of things over and over. You do something over and over and over and over again. Yeah. What do you think in chapter 11? What do you think this whole thing about quantity versus quality? Gary, what do you think about that?
Well, I thought it was an interesting insight because, we're encouraged to practice excellence and deliver quality. But then you look back at this whole thing of repetition and building memory and habits, and it kind of makes more sense because you make more mistakes, you correct your mistakes, and then you pull out the best. So everybody that's ever tried anything new knows that you're not that great at it when you get started, no matter what your ego is telling you. And, I played with photography for the last 10 years or so. And sometimes I would take 30, 40, 50 shots of something, and especially a live speaker. You could take like 30 shots and get 2 that you really like. So I've experienced that, especially when you see somebody's mouth and their face is twisted and their tongue's sticking out, a lot of stuff that is reject. And then you really get one that looks prolific. I've got a couple of you, Danny, that look pretty good, huh?
He sounded
You've only taken like 1,000 pictures of him. You only got a couple that are good. I like
taken a lot of pictures over the years of Danny.
Blair Ball, that friend of mine was in Memphis when he decided to get out of mortgage and banking and went over into a couple of areas, including photography. And that's what he does. If you've seen any of his work on Facebook,
he's good.
And he takes a massive, just click, and change a couple of things. Click, and it just massive amount of it. And and he did that back when he first started, where he was developing his own film and everything. He was still taking, he said, a lot of.
I'm sorry, I got to take a call real quick. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway,
one of the things I like, Danny, was it said you've got to master the habit of showing up. And that I wrote down for myself because I'm like, that's it. I mean, teaching your kids whatever you're doing, if you just master the habit of showing up, the rest will follow.
Yeah, I'm one of the things that doing through my some accountability stuff I'm doing, leading people through, is creating streaks that and putting out some challenges, whatever you want to challenge yourself on this month. And I've been doing it for a few months. For instance, you got a challenge going on, anything that you want, and everybody chose something physically, push-ups, sit-ups, and stupid things called burpees and a few other things. But how many are you going to do in a month? But you have to do at least one per day. And if you miss a day, you have to start all over. A couple of y'all know Tony Cubbage. Tony, back in June, and some people just stop and they don't pick it back up. You know, it's also about ownership, owning what you say you're going to do. Back in June, he was going to do 1,000 burpees in June, but he had to do at least, the deal is one a day. And at day 15 or 16, and some days he would do 100, other days he would do about 30, 33, 34 a day. But if he had on his big run days, he would do just one. He forgot to do one on day, I think, 16. So he started back over. He skipped July, started back over in August and did his 33 and had, or did his 1,000. He had the last 10 days, he only had to do one a day. And so a few of us were texting, reminding him on the last day of August to get that one in, so he didn't have to start all over. That's a big deal. It's a real big deal to create that consistency and just showing up and doing it. So,
Although I will say one thing, Woody Allen gets a lot of credit for saying this quote, is life and success is just about showing up. It makes me want to stick my finger in my throat. No, it's not. That is so wrong.
No, but he's an idiot. So
yeah.
That's true.
So, the other thing is about this is, the quantity. What is it, Gary, we heard, or Herdy? Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you can learn to do it well.
there you go.
I guess that's why I bought a dive shop at one time in my life, and didn't know how to scuba dive. I bought a dive shop, started running a dive shop, and didn't know how to scuba dive. So,
There you go.
but I had a scuba instructor that worked, that worked there. So, gosh,
You said you're running a dive. What? You're running a dive? I didn't catch everything. I was on a call. So did you say you're running some sort of dive? Sounds like a bar.
No, a scuba shop.
Oh, dive shop. Okay.
Yeah, dive shop. I was selling water skis more or less out of my house, and then started helping a guy sell Hobie Cat sailboats, and we moved. Then a guy actually hired me first to run his dive shop. Then I bought it after about a year, and I didn't know how to scuba dive. Eventually did, became an instructor, but anyway. This on page 143, where I've got a bunch of stuff, can't see it, but marked in red, marked in blue, green. Motion makes you feel like you're getting things done, but really you're just preparing to get something done. When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, I love that. When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, you need to change something. You want to be practicing.
But there's huge value in both, as everybody knows. For example, I still make a lot of outbound calls for my own company. And if I have to dig those calls out of my database or go back into a newsletter open, it takes 2 to 3 times as long to get calls. But if I have them all set up in my CRM and I can simply make the call and go to the next one in the list, then I get significantly more accomplished. So there is great value in preparation. You just can't take the action out of the equation.
Yeah, well, I think that's the next chapter, isn't it? About
Action.
yeah, and kind of doing like the guy that if you make good habits more convenient, you'll be more like, I just flipped over and saw this, but where the guy that was, he kept everything clean and straightened up as he went. I want to argue about that, but like my calls, when I get through here today, I'm going into my CRM. I don't have to prep. I've already got a task set to call people. Like yesterday, had about 3 things going on, and as I input stuff into CRM, Kathy, she does a couple hours of work for me a day, and she just goes through and marks ahead of time so that I just bring it up, look at the task to call people, and that's what I need to do. So yeah.
Am I on that list?
What's that?
Am I on that list?
Do you need to be?
Yeah,
I thought
give me
we're
a call.
caught up. I thought we're caught up.
I just don't want to catch up with you on something else.
Okay, all right. I will say what. I'll just make a note right now as we go. I'll be preparing as we go. How about that?
I like it.
As I've removed three other messages for stuff I need to, I didn't see. All D. What do you think? Was it this chapter? No, it's a later chapter. I'll bring that up later.
When you got blocked by going up and down in the mountains of the hill country, we decided that we would press on to 13 or 14, didn't we, Hardy?
Okay. Is that what you did? Okay.
Yeah. We just said, Danny is having connection problems, and we kind of walked through these points.
Oh, okay.
We
Good.
asked everybody to read the next 2 chapters.
Yeah, so I'll just end this chapter with the chapter summary, the last point. The amount of time you have been performing a habit, what we started with, what you said, Gary, is not as important as the number of times you have performed it. Man, that's good. That's that. Go back to Jim Collins and the flywheel and the evaluation and correction. It's how fast you go around that wheel. So the law of least effort. I've got it highlighted in 3 different colors. Page 151. Conventional wisdom holds that motivation is the key to habit change. But if you really wanted it, you'd actually do it. But the truth is, our real motivation is to be lazy and do what is convenient. And despite what the latest productivity bestseller will tell you, this is a smart strategy, not a dumb one. Energy is precious, and the brain is wired to conserve it whenever possible. It is human nature to follow the law of least effort.
But we all know there are exceptions to that rule. And that's why sales managers love what they call meat eaters, is that they don't think about the least course of action. They think about what's it going to take to get me where I want to be. And, what's the one thing, and then who's the other author you were just reading a month or so ago, Danny, about the things that he gave up?
I got nothing.
We talked about it early in the summer. Anyway, it's the whole aspect of what's trivial, what can you cut out of your life so you can prioritize the higher things. And it's probably on my bookshelf right behind me, but I can't tell you either. That's why I asked. Anyway, somebody wrote a whole book about the trivial aspects of the things that weren't contributing to where he wanted to go.
Oh,
like watching all the news and,
oh yeah.
social media.
Yeah, and that wasn't Brian McAlwin Essentialism, but it was that one's in my head. I was just talking to Dan Forbes, and on the flight down to Florida, he took that book with him and went through all his highlights in the book on the 2.5 hour flight. But just a second, Gary, I'm looking at what book it might be.
His last name Young?
Were we talking about the compound effect?
Yeah.
Yeah, Darren Hardy.
Okay. Hardy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and he's a master at that. You know, I've been in his year-long program. He is master at that. So on page 152, this is the law of least effort we're talking about in chapter 12. It says, in a sense, every habit is just an obstacle to getting what you really want. Now I had to ponder this a little bit, but dieting is an obstacle to getting fit.
Say it again.
Meditation, what's
Say
that?
it again, please. Repeat.
On page 152, dieting is an obstacle to getting fit. Meditation is an obstacle to feeling calm. Journaling is an obstacle to thinking clearly. So I think I just realized what I was struggling with on this, even as I went on a pretty long walk for late lunch a while ago and was re-listening to all of that. And obviously, dieting is not the only obstacle to getting fit. Meditation is not the only obstacle to keep feeling calm. Journaling is not the only obstacle to thinking clearly, but they are obstacles. I guess if you anyway, I'm trying to play that but thing, but
So in that particular case, when you take things out of your, I got to do this, I got to watch the news, then does that not make it easier? Because you're no longer in a dichotomy. Your mind is no longer pulled in two directions.
to explain, I didn't get it.
So if you take something out, let's just say that you're doing social media, you're watching the news, or you're watching some Netflix series, and you still got energy, you can be productive, and then you psychologically cut that out of your lifestyle. Does that not make that productive effort more easy?
Because you've added more time.
Yeah, you just filled your void that you created with productive activity.
I'll just speak for myself. I will usually not use it for that, though I am working on it. I'm reading a book for the third time in the last listening to a book for the third time in the last 30 days on having an unhurried, there's two books actually, Unhurried Life and Unhurried Leadership. And what I'm trying to do is not, as I think this comes out of a little bit out of essentialism, is as you delete things, just definitely influenced by Darren Hardy the last year. As you delete things, you don't fill it with necessarily with something else to be more productive in an area. I guess it's what you choose to do with that. Let me back up. I'm going to head down a real bad rabbit trail on that. But you choose, I guess the easy answer to your question, Gary, would be, well, it depends on what you choose to do with that time. If I choose to, my alarm goes off at 4:30 every morning. If I wake up at 4:05, 4:15, like I a lot of times do, and get out of bed, what are you grinning at, Paul? Paul started snickering. If
I
I,
won't ever do that again. I had to get up at 5 every day when I was working as a store manager for Walmart for 22 years. I get up. I'm lucky to get up at 7, and that's a good time compared to like it used to be 8,
so
4 o'clock in the morning. What kind of people get up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
yeah, so if I get up at 4:15, there's a lot of mornings. I mean, my day at 8 o'clock every morning, I'm on a accountability call with some guys. Okay, and sometimes gals. Beth, it's not all about the guys. So at 8 o'clock, boom, and there's mornings that I get up at between 4 and 4:15, and you know what? I seem to be running late, wanting to get on or not quite as ready to get on that call. Make sense, Gary? That kind of what you're talking about?
I don't know, Danny. I don't know what you're doing with that 4 hours.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that so back to what you were saying is, if you quit doing something, you've got to choose what you're going to do with that time.
True.
I know me. I have to be I'm a high DCI. My eyes is too high up close to my C in on the disc that I naturally will gravitate just to I got extra time and just start anyway. I'll drift off. Well, heaven forbid if I look at Facebook before 7 o'clock in the morning or going to LinkedIn to do some adjustments on my profile or something like that. So I have to stay off of all of that. But anyway, what about you? What do you do? You quit doing something. If you quit doing something, I should turn this back on you a long time ago.
Well, I will say one thing because, at this age, I know that I need some recuperation and downtime. So I'm not going to beat myself up if I watch a ball game or go do social media, but I prefer to work on something that I see that I have a either self-imposed or otherwise imposed deadline. And so I'll cut things out. So for example, I'm giving a presentation on LinkedIn at Toastmasters. We're having an open house on Friday. And I've got to find some time to adjust some slides. So as soon as this is over, I have it on my checklist before I go to an allergy clinic. I might just goof off between the time we finish up and the time I need to get in the truck and go to the clinic. But now I have a firm thing I want to get accomplished. And so I personally, I have that DC personality too with some and it resonates with me. I feel like I've accomplished something if I can check it off my list and say, I've got that prepared. I don't have to work on it at the last minute. I hate that last minute stuff.
Yeah, this is pretty good. You get that done today on Tuesday and before Friday.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got a deadline. I don't want to do it Thursday night.
So, this is why it is crucial to make your habits so easy that you'll do them even when you don't feel like it. You can make your good habits more convenient, you'll be more likely to follow through on them. Down at the bottom of page 152, the less friction you face, the easier it is for your stronger self to emerge. The idea behind make it easy is not to only do easy things. The idea is to make it easy as possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. I don't care who you are. This is good stuff.
Another comment that I'm big on, especially the younger you know this stuff, you start taking personality tests and you know where your strengths are. And once you've got a strong personality strength that you recognize, then it is easier for you. So for example, maybe you're writing the book, or you like to prepare lessons and deliver them to people, and you like to coach. So there's something in your personality that says, I get a charge out of that. It comes naturally to me. I feel fulfilled when I do those things. So if you can work in your area, and let's just say Beth's a very accomplished sales lady, that she chose a field that was right for her personality. And you can jump in there anytime, Beth.
Sure. What's funny is I didn't recognize it. Nobody in my family was in sales. It took an outside person to say, hey, could you come work for me? I was getting an MBA. It was the summer in between. She said, could you come work for me? And I said, sure. She was selling Viromed Laboratory Services. And the training I got is she said, whatever I did didn't work. So you go see these people. That was my first sales training.
That's tough.
But, you know, yeah, it was tough, but I didn't know any better. So, you know, I knew her laboratory. I went out and talked about her and her laboratory, what she was doing. She sold it to LabCorp for $35 million a decade ago. Started with a $50,000 investment from her dad, PhD immunologist. She built the Johnson City's got that science mill. She built that in retirement. But the reason she left the University of Minnesota is they wouldn't accommodate her kids' schedule. She had 2 boys and they were just, you know, weren't working around her schedule. And she said, I'm out of here. You never know what's going to happen, right? But you're right. I'm a talker and I'm very intuitive, which can also get me going down rabbit holes with people. I have to kind of rein that in as far as personalities on the disc.
Yeah. Herdy, on the Fascinate profile, the Sally Hogg said, what are you, the maestro or
Catalyst.
catalyst? Yeah, the catalyst. Yeah. Which, what are you on the disc? Remember?
I have to look it up. It's
Yeah.
a couple combinations.
Yeah.
I
What are
will
you on
say,
the-
no,
what's
I'm
that?
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Danny. Sorry.
Yeah, Gary, what are you on the Fascinate?
Oh, I'm a
Prestige and
prestige and steady.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't like the prestige thing. It kind of reeks of egocentric. So I prefer to substitute the word excellence.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that is one of the words.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the description, but it's prestige and whatever the steady, responsible individual is. I'm that. But are we all in agreement that if you're working in your personality strengths, it's so much easier?
It's much, much easier. And it was a challenge for me to kind of help my son see that about his own personality. We did some different personality tests so that he could kind of figure out, and he's an introvert who likes to talk to people, but he has to have that downtime. He can't just, you know, not like sales where you're talking to people all day long. So it's been, you know, it's been interesting. And then figuring out how do you fit your personality to your work. And he was doing tax law, and I think that was a little too dry for him. Just a little too dry.
That sounds like my son is a people-oriented introvert, but he will hit a wall. Like he's probably hit it right about now. He had he had a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning, and then he had prep work with somebody getting ready for a 2-hour class today. And then they were immediately following that class, they were doing a power hour that he was leading for our salespeople with Smiling and Dialing, and Gary had given them, and so somebody else was doing the prep work for that because he was going to be in the class. So here in about another 30, 45, in the next hour, he will be done.
Yeah.
He's wiped out.
Yeah. So
how about you, Paul? Where do you fit on the grand scheme of personality and job skills?
I don't know. What page is that on? Sorry, I feel like I'm so, there's so much going on today.
After we've drifted.
We're off topic.
We're on to the point of knowing your personality strengths, and that makes your job function easier.
I don't know. I mean, my wife says I can talk to anybody into anything. So maybe that's where it is. But I mean, as a store manager for Walmart for 22 years, and I had to talk a lot, but and manage a lot. But I don't manage anybody here. I just talk to people on the phone. So it's like, I don't know. I guess I'm pretty good at talking to people and pretty good at being. I don't know. I think one skill I have is if I talk to somebody. We have clients from Germany, France, China, all over the place. They're originally from other places. And I think I'm good at talking to people's level. I mean, because I just talked to, a good old boy, just got a new pickup truck, and I can talk to him, get old down, he's from Belton, and then have a good old conversation about, fishing and stuff. And then I can have another conversation about somebody else about, all sorts of different things. And I think I'm good at talking to people's at the level they're at. Because I'm not saying it's not really an intelligence thing. It's just more of a personality, what level of personality they are. Because some people want to be really prim and proper, and other people don't. And then, everybody's different.
Yeah, when I look at, I'm trying to compare, here mentally, I'm a high D. I can fluctuate a little bit between that DI and the DC, but primarily a DC. A lot of my weaknesses are on the I side, but I'm in the fascinate. My two are I'm kind of like Gary with his prestige. My two whatever those things are called. My two sectors are mystique and power, and which some of the words is I'm a good resource. Okay, it says I like being a good resource. So as you drill down through the D or through the disc into another assessment that gets down at different levels, I think it helps. Gary's a DC, Dan is a DC, but his C is almost as high as his D. So he has very little that talkative factor. I can call Gary, and boy, he just immediately he got something to talk about. Dan's wondering why I'm calling him. Which he texted me. He's in Florida this week with his mom, but doing some work. But he texted me yesterday and said, "Hey, give me a call this week if you got time." Well, I called him about an hour ago. Hey, just checking in, and it was a 3-minute conversation. Okay, so that's Dan, but that's where you and I, Paul, talk. Hurdy and I talked for how long this morning, Hurdy? 20 minutes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Dan calls are pretty short.
Yeah, Dan's calls are all pretty short. So yeah.
And if Dan gets through talking with you, he'll cut it off.
Yep, it's done. Yeah,
it's done.
So
yeah, I know I've done it before. I know I'm D high D. D's my dominant, but I think honestly my personality has changed a lot from being a store manager to being what I am now. I think if I would have done that survey back then and done it now, I'm sure it'd be a lot different, just because how things are and what kind of job I have and stuff. But
yeah, the environment can impact you for sure.
Yeah.
So moving on through this, the law of least effort. This part about the Japanese companies looked at every point of friction in the manufacturing process and eliminated it. If you look at the most, and I'm on page 154. If you look at the most habit-forming products, you'll notice that one of the things these goods and services do best is remove little bits of friction from your life. Meal delivery services reduce the friction of shopping for groceries. Dating apps reduces the friction of making social introductions. Ride sharing reduces the friction of getting across town. Text messaging reduces the friction of sending a letter in the mail. And so The central idea is to create, down on page 155, the central idea is to create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Much of the battle of building better habits comes down to finding ways to reduce the friction associated with our good habits and increase the friction associated with our bad habits.
So Danny, in a few minutes, I'm going to take off, but there was something we kind of glossed over a little bit. We mentioned earlier is that something maybe you've been told us is that motivation is important. Well, according to this book, motivation is just a small part of it. It's the frequency, it's the action, it's the so motivation may not be the key that you're really passionate about something, because that's a feeling, right? Comes and goes. I mean, you know, how many people you say, well, he's not very motivated to get anything done. Well, you know, we're beginning to think into the process that it has nothing to do. It has a very little to do with motivation and more to do with the action and the frequency and the retraining and the repracticing of something different within a habit, right? So, wow.
Yeah.
That was a big deal, because you always hear, well, that, you know, I got to get more motivated.
Yeah, and there are days that, you know, we go back to the book we covered a year ago, the law, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth and Law of Environment. There's some times I need to put myself into a little bit different environment to get motivated, because I mean, motivation, being motivated, and will, you know, just sucking out and having the will to do it will always let you down. And I don't know if he talked about that in here or something else I've learned about in the compound effect of Darren Hardy, that you establish these habits, and so there's something internally that's driving you to get there. Go ahead, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say, kind of along the lines of what Herdy just said, Tim Hawkes said a couple of weeks ago, just having real strong virtues are a motivator, which doesn't mean you have to be jumping up and down, being, you know, jumping jack flash, but your values drive you and you're motivated to live out those virtues.
That's a great point. Was that in a sermon, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll look up which one and send that to me, or just text me the name of it and I'll look it up. So, you know, ending this chapter, the last paragraph, it says, whether we are approaching behavior change as an individual, a parent, a coach, or a leader, we should ask ourselves the same question. How can we design a world where it's easy to do what's right? That's what you said there, Jim. Redesign your life so the actions that matter most are also the actions that are easiest to do. I'm just reminded of something I've read or listened to in the past week. Actually, now that I remember, it's a fiction book that I read back 30 years ago that I'm listening to now, by Louis L'Amour, established in the late 17, early 1800s. Was talking about Ben Franklin, and you know, he had his 13 virtues that he wrote out when he was 19 or so years old, that he kept working on. So he worked on one per week and he was still working on them, and had a slip of paper in his pocket when he died, and those virtues that he worked on creating that habit and constantly coming back to them. So chapter summary: human behavior follows the law of least effort. You will naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. So we create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Reduce the friction associated with good behavior. When friction is low, habits are easy. Increase the friction associated with bad habits. And was it in this chapter where he talked about that, if you have a bad habit of watching too much TV, then never turn the TV on unless you know what you're getting ready to watch. Always put the control box in a certain spot, not where you sit down, or unplug the TV every time you get through watching. Create some friction there. I did that when Austin was about 5 years old. I know Gary's heard the story that he woke his mom up one morning. He had gotten up real early, went over to watch cartoons, and I had unplugged the TV just 30 years ago. I unplugged the TV and used a whole roll of I don't know if it was masking tape or not packing tape or maybe duct tape and wrapped up the whole end, all of it into a big ball. I wanted him to quit watching so many cartoons. He woke his mom up and said something's wrong with Dad. So prime your environment.
So here's the thing.
What's that, Gary?
Oh, I was just saying that, it takes the maturity and wisdom to build infrastructure. And let's just say it's in your business and you've got to work your database and get prepared to be productive during the day. And that's like scratching fingernails on the chalkboard. But if you convince yourself that the work I'm doing now, the infrastructure I'm building is going to pay off for the next 6 months or a year because you spent half a day or a day doing this, then, emotionally, it's difficult when you're doing that stuff, but you just got to keep repeating yourself. This is going to make my life easier and more productive. I got to do this.
Yeah.
And in fact, Gary, I'm not trying to build a business or do anything right now like that, but I'm working every day at a job that's different from what I used to do. And one thing I do, it's just a habit to cut the friction, is I make sure I've got one call or one patient I'm going to look up that I leave to start the next morning on. So that when I go back and sit down in front of my computer, I'm like, what should I start on? No, I've got one.
Yeah.
And I don't do a long list or pile of them, but just one so that I can kind of get started. And it just kind of cranks the engine, like when you have a hand crank.
Yeah.
Prime the pump a little bit. Yep. So.
I kind of do the same thing, but I mean, I pretty much have a to-do list each morning, and I always write it from the day before of what because I mean, there's things that on the list that's not something that's going to happen today. Like, I mean, I have like 3 people right now at the mortgage company, because those bad mortgage people, they don't do stuff right. At renewals, they'd switch mortgage companies and insurance didn't get paid yet, and so I need to follow up on them. They've already supposedly mailed it. I'm just following up, make sure it gets paid before it gets canceled. Stuff like that. It's not. I mean, some of those is not till the 30th of this month. One's on the 21st. Different things like that. They're just kind of on my list. But then I have other things like that. Just a few things that are like important. I know I have to quote somebody tomorrow and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree. I think if you don't have something to start your day, then you start out kind of like wobbly legged, kind of not really in your first hour can be kind of like not very organized.
Well, and I also have a to-do list that's kind of this ongoing, things that have to get done. But what I found out was that I got in a car and I drove to an office and I knew where I was going, what zip code, what I was doing. Now, half of the time I'm sitting in front of a computer, and that was a new experience for me to just sit down and have to start in on a device. And so I got to do what you're saying, Paul, have it ready to go.
Yeah, that's a big environmental change for you.
It is, yes. Now I'm supposed to be traveling. When they hired me, they said we'd be traveling 80%. I traveled maybe 20 to 30%. This week, I'm not going anywhere. Next week, I'm flying to Amarillo. Whoop-de-doo.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting. And I'll go see, the University Health System. And I don't know, there's some Texas Tech thing, even though it's Amarillo, medical-wise.
Yeah.
So I haven't been to Amarillo for sales. since about 2009.
The
Selling
price
back.
changed a lot.
So I'm gonna guess not much has changed.
It's grown a good amount. I mean, I haven't been there in a while either, but I've looked at that. And it's been in. Actually, it's probably grown a pretty decent amount. But every time I go to Amarillo, I'm like, why does anybody want to live here?
So I'll give y'all a report when it'll be a couple weeks. I'll give you a
But I
report.
kind of think the same thing about Lubbock, Abilene, Odessa.
Midland, Odessa. Yep.
Yeah, all those areas. It's like, why does anybody want to live in any of those places? But
Well,
answer is because they get paid by the oil company.
there's a
Well,
good reason.
Yeah, I've tried to do the end of the day prep for tomorrow, but I can't do it. So
Well,
I spend 15, 20 minutes in the morning, part of my morning routine that I spend going through call them my dailies, and get started off as I look at yesterday's text, I look at yesterday's emails, I look at yesterday's phone calls, and that I made, that voicemails to see that I took care of everything, start the list and add to it, and kind of use the thing, who Saint Ignatius was, kind of use something that he says you do at the end of the day, for that day and the next day. So I use something with that to then get ready for the day, and it's anyway, helps me.
I'll confess mine's also a cutoff because I could just keep going. Our hub doesn't close till 7 at night. I could just keep working on the next thing or the next thing. So it's really like, what am I going to do next? And I just scribble it down and then I shut it down. It's not so much the day's planning. It's just that one little thing.
Yeah. What do you do,
And,
Gary? How do you? So what you're saying, Beth, is that's part of your bookend of your day. And
Yeah.
you bookend your day with that at the end of the day. Hey, how about you, Gary?
I'm in a prospecting mode right now, trying to build the business. And so I'm doing multiple touches, and I typically book those a week out. So if I call 10 or 15 people today and I have a note that I sent them one of my books, and then next week it's going to be a phone call, and then it's going to be a negotiations email. And so I stack those week to week. Typically it's email communications and a voicemail, and then I'll make a real strong effort to get them on the phone. So it's your follow-up touching process that I'm doing, but everything's on a CRM, and I still have my piece of paper, my pad, my 3-ring binder over here, around multiple ring, and I have the big things I know I want to get accomplished during the day. And so it may be 15 or 20 calls, and it may be get prepared for this talk or some other meeting I'm going to go to, and they're on my big notebook, handwritten. I'm going to do that.
Very good. All right, guys, gals, and gal.
Well, I'm from Minnesota where everybody's a guy, so it's okay.
Don't y'all say something like Minnesota? Don't you know something like that?
Yeah, don't you know? We do. I'm from Minnesota.
We'll get. I love the next chapter, chapter 13. I listened to some of 14 also. This afternoon, so lunch today. But we'll pick up 13 and 14 next week. All right.
Very good. Thanks for
Thank you
hosting.
all. Appreciate it.
Thank
See
you,
ya.
everybody. Have a great week out there.